Greetings, we're your hosts. I'm Dobby, and this is Doppler. I was gonna say something else, I forgot. So, this is gonna be our first review of the new year, and it is Sevendust's new record, Truth Killer. Now, we typically start this off with giving our perspectives of how we came to discover said group, said genre, said whatever. So, we will begin with that. You.
Well, first of all, I want to say we are really late to the party on this album. By the time this gets out, by the time this is released, it'll have been out for like 6 months.
We typically are.
Yeah.
Just scheduling.
All part of that's just, scheduling, our time crunches, and the fact that we just started this channel, a month and a half ago? 3 months ago.
We just started this channel like 3 months ago. It is taken off way quicker than I expected, or at least from my perspective it has.
Yep.
And so we ended up switching to this new channel, and so here we are.
So anyway, Sevendust. I became a fan of Sevendust back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I've owned several of their albums. Animosity is still my favorite. But yeah, I've been a fan ever since. Like I told you the other day, I think Lejean has a very unique voice to where you hear him, you know exactly who it is.
Do you really still have football still going?
Oh, no. I don't know what the hell's going on. Anyway, so I've been a fan of theirs for, 25 years at least. Well, close to 25 years.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what else really to tell you.
For me, actually, I had heard the name. I couldn't tell you when. Didn't actively listen to them. I might have heard them come up on some compilation, and I was like, oh, okay. And then whenever I was going over and watching the Zen of Screaming video from Melissa Cross, where I was primarily had known that she trained Randy from Lamb of God and Matt Tuck can be a bullet. I'm like, okay, well, let me see how I can do and progress my own vocals. And that's whenever I learned that she trained LeBron of Lejean, whatever his name is.
Lejean. L-A-J-O-N.
Yeah, something. She trained him as well, and so I was like, oh, very nice. And so I still didn't listen to them. I knew what I liked at the time, and I just didn't really stray far from that. I had no reason to, and I had very particular taste, I still do. But whenever I had heard them say that, I think Lejean had said that in some interview, or it might have been on the Melissa Cross video, that they were in a weird place because they were too metal for the punk shows, but too punk for the metal shows. And so they fit in a very odd place. And even then, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And so I still never listened to them. And whenever he told me about them, I'm like, okay, well, after probably 20 years, I'll give it a shot and see how it goes. And so, yeah, that was my track record with them.
So a couple other things I'll add is you talked about how, what he said about metal and punk, whatever. They're a band that they've always said that they don't really, tie themselves to a genre.
And we're going to discuss about this later, but they don't.
Yes, they don't. We'll go more into that. There's a reason. But another reason I've been a fan, which, I guess this really isn't a big deal, but to me, I always thought it was cool, is I grew up in Atlanta, and they're from Atlanta, so
yeah,
got that tie there as well.
Also, I want to say that this is going to probably give me some bites in the comments, but I can't deny, you have to consider, I grew up in the 90s. He was pretty much a teenager in the 90s, so back then, whenever it came to rock or metal, there weren't many black vocalists anywhere on the spectrum, and so to any
even today there aren't a ton.
Still not.
There's maybe a little bit more, but there's still not a ton.
I will say, vocalists who are black out there, thank you for what you do, because you are astounding. Like, the very few that I have heard, they knock it out of the fucking park completely. I mean, we're talking about John, Howard Jones, vocalist for Ad Infinitum.
I know you're talking about. I can think of his name. What's Derek Green? We were just looking at something. Him. Who is he?
Sepultura.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's what I was saying about. And I think that there actually is a black vocalist within black metal. I just don't remember who the guy is. But regardless, you guys have incredible voices, and just wow, keep on going.
Of course, you got Living Color from back in the day too.
Yeah,
like Cult of Personality.
Living Color, like, god damn. I understand they had their ordeal, but yeah. Anyways, so the next part, since we've gone into that, is we typically go and give these things. Well, I'll let you go into it, and then you can give your rating, or give your rating first, and then go into the details of it.
I'm actually going to give my rating later. I'm not going to give it right away. Normally I do, but this time I'm not. I'm actually want to talk about the album.
Okay.
You know, one thing I've always loved about Sevendust, and it continues with this album, is they always stay true to who they are and to their sound and their music. Like when you hear it, you know it's them, because as we talked about, they don't really fit into anywhere.
And this is the reason why I love Lamb of God, because they only changed their sound like a few albums ago. Like on Resolution, they started changing up their sound, but they still kept their fundamental, and that's what I love about them. They don't fucking change.
Well, like Sevendust, they'll experiment with certain sounds here and there, but they still stay true to themselves.
And I love groups that do that. I don't like groups that just differentiate just for the hell of it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bands. But anyway. So, as for the album itself, first off, song number 1, What in the World? You know, when I think of usually a song that starts off an album, you know, I think of something that kind of gets you, especially if you're in a rock or metal album, I think something that's going to get you hyped up into the album, whatever. This song kind of did the opposite. It was very... Like, it was very odd. Like, when I say once in a while they'll experiment, this song kind of felt like that's what that was. It was very odd. It ended better than, like, the first part of it. But the first part of it, I'm like, what the hell is this? It had me a tick worried for the rest of the album. So, yeah. Now... after we get past that one, from song 2 through song 12, it has probably been the most consistent album we have listened to yet. And what I mean by that is, in terms of quality or how decent the songs were, pretty much all of them were really close together. Like every other album we did, including the ones that were really, really good, they were kind of, you know, they had their ebbs and flows in terms of, like, you know, songs that were really good, songs were just okay, then, you know, whatever. This one, it stayed pretty much consistent quality-wise, or how good the songs were, at least for me anyway, all the way through. Now, there were some variations, but, you know, some that I like more than others. One thing about Sevendust too is, to me anyway, they have a very unique guitar tuning that they use, or the sound of their guitars. Like, to me, I mean, I'm sure there's other bands that are close, but like if I heard them, I would always say, to me, they would sound like Sevendust, because when I think of the kind of the tuning or the I don't know if I'm using the right word, because you know more about this part than I do. Well, I mean, it's distinct to them for me.
Some groups will like have slightly modified tuning, because even I'll do it myself. Because if you have a chord that you're going to do this number with, and you might change the tuning slightly to where you're doing like this, to where it's less intense on transition, then yeah, people will do that. It's not done much, but people will do it. I mean, the most variation we get is drop D tuning, and
Yeah.
but I mean, groups that change it around to where you don't necessarily know that they're doing it unless they're just playing something that just sounds a little varied from what you're used to, but it works.
Yeah, like and here, like for Sevendust anyway, they have a very, to me, a guitar tone that is Sevendust. Like to me, if I hear it, I think of them. Even if another band might try it, it makes me think of Sevendust. If that makes any sense whatsoever.
One thing I want to do, and I doubt this is going to be out there, but I'd love to see what Captain speakers they're using, because, like, in the studio, this is going to be completely different. They have, depending on what studio they use, they have a plethora of options where they can do reamping and try different sounds and different blends. But I'd be fascinated to know exactly what all was used for this album.
Right. That I don't know. Like I said before, Lejean's got a very distinct voice. I think, his cleans and even his harsh vocals, I guess you would call them, I think they sound good. I think he's always sounded good.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yep. Morgan, the drummer, has always been ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, they're just... This album, for me...
What's the band set at? Like 1 or 2?
2.
You mind knocking it down to 1?
Anywho, so... what was it? I don't even know what I was saying now. But anyway, so... In terms of songs I didn't like, really only one. That was the first one. I still don't know what that was. It was very weird. Favorites? Which, now, I will be honest, before we listened to it, I had heard 2 of the songs off this album already. I had heard Everything and Fence, because they had released music videos and I had watched them. Having listened to the album, Fence is my favorite song on it. Superficial Drug was really good. It's probably the catchiest one on there. Like, if you were going to have a song get stuck in your head off this album, it's probably going to be that one. But, I mean, overall, I thought it was a solid album. In terms of score, now not on my score, I debated hard. I bounced around multiple times on what I was going to give it. And hell, I'm still debating even now. For now, I'm going to say 7.5. If it wasn't for that first song, it probably would have been an 8. Now, the reason why A, I'm a Sevendust fan, so I'm going to be slightly biased. 2, it was a solid album. Like I said, from 2 through 12, for me, it was the most consistent album of any of the albums that we listened to, in terms of, like, they were all, I think every single song I gave between a 7 and an 8 or 8.5 for all of them. Now, I gave the first one like a 4.5. I don't know what happened there. But, for me, outside of, like, if I had made this album, I probably would have removed the first song and just made it an 11-track album. Because the first song didn't even really feel like it fit with the album either. It was very different from the rest of it.
Might have been working more as like a bonus track.
Yeah, maybe instead of having it 1, had it as 12 as a bonus track. That could have worked, yeah. But now my favorite album from them is Animosity. I love Seasons. I think it was the name of that album anyway. I liked, was it Kill the Flaw? I think is what it was called. And I'd almost put this album up there with those. It was a very solid album from them. It was, it's one that I would seriously consider buying. Now, I know you can get more into the mixing and musical side of it than I can. I'm more just the average fan listening and explaining things.
I'm the deep dive.
Yeah. Now, sometimes you'll say things that I'm like, yeah, I mean, but Yeah. So anyway, I said before I was curious to see what you think of this because honestly,
I was about to
I could
ask.
see you going either way, either not caring for it at all or really like I honestly could.
Because I was about to say what, because I was going to start off with what, because I remember you said that to me, and I didn't know what to think, and so I was wondering why did you say that?
Because I literally could see you being on either end of the spectrum. Like I really could. Like I honestly don't know where you would be for this one. Like it's hard for me to say.
Okay, so for me, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, coming into this as a new listener to them, I'm not gonna lie, I got incredibly frightened by the first track, which you knew I would.
Yeah, I knew you would, but I did too. I did too because I was like, "What is this?"
But what saved it was his voice.
Yes, I would agree. Just
with that. He has, and for the majority of black male vocalists that are within the rock and metal area, they have such a distinct and amazing cross between like a tenor baritone voice that just it really comes through and it just captivates you. And now another thing that I've noticed with black vocalists, and this can be true for like white vocalists as well, but I've noticed it way more with black vocalists, is that not just their resonance in the voice, but the way they can carry a note and then just gradually go into the next, or just kind of give a slight vibrato to the voice, but still maintain it.
One thing I can say about black vocalists, and this is men or women, that they tend, not always, but tend to be better about than women, or no, excuse me, than white vocalists, is they tend to be able to bring a lot more soul into their voice into the
that
music.
Also comes from majority of their influences, which I'm going to go into. But like, yeah, I mean, whenever, and this is not to be stereotypical, but this is kind of like, I bring humor and stereotype into both ethnicities. It doesn't matter who the hell you are. Considering that most black vocalists probably grew up on watching Soul Train and having that as their influence, I mean, they know how to bring life into stuff. Now,
I also think about, the whole blues scene back in the day and all that. Where their history and music comes from, going back.
Now, that being said, they can absolutely, for me, take it way too far and become just a turn off.
Anybody can do that.
And one instance of that, which we had a funny polarizing opinion of this, is Whitney Houston's version of I Will Always Love You. I hate that version with a fiery passion.
I love it. I'm the total opposite. I can't handle Dolly Parton's version.
I love Dolly.
And I absolutely love Whitney Houston.
Yeah. But regardless of that,
it's rare we disagree, but that was one we did.
But towards it, because like I'm listening to this, and like the whole beats of the head at the beginning, I'm like, it wasn't incredibly offensive to me, especially with the way LeBron.
It's not basketball, sir.
Maybe he does. I don't know. But LeJean,
yeah.
Okay,
LeJean Witherspoon.
Okay. The way LeJean
or Witherspoon, oh, whatever, something like that,
sings along with it, it makes it so much better for me. And I also kind of started thinking while I was listening to this, which I do this every time I hear beats. I'm like, if this was an actual drum set, what would it sound like if it were to have actually, instead of just a random click, right, if it actually had a depth to it and an atmosphere to it.
Right.
And I'll be damned if second half of it, the drums were doing the exact same thing and it had everything I was considering, and I'm like, this is why I can't stand beats, is because there's no depth to it, there's no atmosphere to it,
a lot of
and it's just there's no life. And
now with beats, if you mix it right or whatever, you can sometimes get an atmosphere, but depth, that's hard to get.
Yeah, but whenever you're bringing depth and atmosphere into beats, you're going into dubstep territory.
Often, yes.
Yes, and I mean, that can be okay depending on like how it's arranged, but still, I'm like, that is my biggest issue, just because again, we were primarily 90s, and it's like you didn't really have that. You just had the instruments and you had a drum kit, and like the drum kit was able to do that and make it sound like full of life. And so I did not like the beginning of it, but it got way better towards the end.
Yeah.
From Truth Killer down, it was actually about total 3 tracks I didn't care for, and they were slow ones. Like the slower ones I didn't really care for.
I don't remember any of them being slow per se.
Well, they had like a slower, like more, I guess, melodic and almost melancholic feel.
Everything kind of was that way. At least I think, anyway.
Might have been that one. I can't remember. Because here the biggest problem I had
Messenger,
was
maybe.
I can tell you,
I don't remember.
Just because like I wanted to turn the phone on, see what track it was, and make mental notes, but
you were driving. It's hard to.
Well, I was driving, and I didn't want you to see what I was doing, going and thinking, oh, I might like that. And
I was back here, but I wasn't paying attention to what you were doing.
Well, see, still,
you
like
could have done it, I wouldn't have noticed.
And see, I didn't realize that was going on because I didn't want to give you any indicator as to what my thoughts were. Because like whenever we finish the albums, like we don't say anything to each other at all. We wait for this moment. Now, the entirety of this, aside from that, I enjoyed greatly, because here's the funny part about it. Because to me, this whole album, I could describe as one genre, and it's completely different than what I typically hear. Heavy funk alternative metal.
Yeah, but I would also add industrial to that, because they do use industrial elements here and there.
Not enough for me to be able to call it industrial.
Well, I don't know. But, well, maybe for you, but yeah.
Yeah, like, just because, like, I enjoy some industrial, and it's like, and any kind of fundamental element they have, I just consider that more of a voicing.
Yeah.
And
but I mean, everything else that you mentioned, I would agree with it.
Yeah, it's just, and the thing that I really enjoyed about this was that for a lot of alternative that I'm noticing these days is the reason I don't like it is because it's typical white guy heavy alternative, and it's just a whole woe is me sitting on the couch watching a movie, eating a pizza, and feeling sorry for myself, and I fucking hate that. Yeah. The vocalist gives so much life to everything, and just
really does.
And even if it does seem like a more melancholic track, he still has enough just life in his vocals to where, and an interesting, captivating aspect to where it actually keeps you interested and actually feels like a good groove. And just the one thing I really enjoyed about this, and that the reason I say funk, is because the time variations that they would have within everything, like I
can definitely see the funk side.
It was not everything. It was not consistent. It changed up a bit, but it did so in a way that didn't drastically take it to another track. It brought a new characteristic to it, and it kept me actually intrigued by it, because I started thinking, I'm like, okay, what are they about to do next? And the thing I did enjoy about this is, again, with funk, even the guitars, like they'll start to do any particular riff or any kind of just off the cuff thing, and but they'll kind of just do an off the cuff thing that kind of gives another groove or a different type of jam to it, and I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. And just throughout the whole thing, like, his vocals were just, they had a nice funky groove to them, and then whenever he would go into that vocal compression, it was just stellar and perfectly placed, and just, this was amazing. Like, this was a hell of an album that, like, honestly, his vocals and just the style of all this, back whenever we did nu metal, and it was like a studio session in that one group that looked like they were from Brazil, but he had the best vocals we had ever heard.
I think I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, the bass player had a hat and glasses on, and they looked like
I remember the Brazil thing anyway, let's put it that way.
Yeah, but like, just the whole groove, and he had like the best vocals we had heard, because they're so smooth. That's what this reminded me of. and it was just something that you could actually chill and actually enjoy listening to, even if you're not particularly a fan of this genre.
Right.
And that's what I enjoyed about it. And I could, like, No Revolution, that was one that really kicked it, like, that I really noticed that on. Vince was a hell of a track.
Oh, Vince was so good.
Vince was just amazing because they really let out the aggression, and so there were moments where it's like they blended funk and aggression into this, and I'm like, I haven't heard something like this in a long time, and I really enjoyed it just because as I'm getting older, like, yes, I still love aggressive stuff, but I want it to have a fucking groove. I don't want it to just be, it doesn't have to be complete, like, heaviness all throughout to where it's just, it loses its effect. They varied it enough to where once that aggressiveness came through, it was like, damn, that was impactful. And so for that reason, I probably have to, I'm bordering on 7.5 and 8.
Like I was.
Yes, that I'm bordering on that just because, like, for me, yes, this is still a softer genre than I'm typically used to these days, but still, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, they're one of those bands that have always, and this is why he said what he said, they've kind of always teetered on that hard rock metal line.
And I can see that, and just, and aside, and even going into the production of it, god damn, the drum sounds were amazing, guitar sounds were amazing, even though there were moments where I swear they turned up the higher mid-range to where it almost sounded like a gent aspect, but that almost seemed like a voicing. And just the way everything went into it was incredible. Now, the one problem I did have was, which it kind of remedied this at one point, but the little bit slower track that had the orchestral, or had like the strings in it.
I don't remember which one it is, but I think I know what you're talking about, yeah.
But it was slow, and I felt it was slow and kind of, it wasn't as slow as like some of the slower pieces from Stained, but it was like just the let a note ring out for a while, let another note ring out for a while, and what got me frustrated, or I didn't really care for, was it felt like the string section on their timing, it felt like they were going double the tempo that they were, and it just felt awkward. And then, but it eventually leveled itself out to where they were kind of on the same track. I can't remember which one it was. I mean, I could even try and make a mental note and I'll forget it in the next day or two, so it doesn't really help. But yeah, for what it was, I greatly enjoyed it, and I greatly enjoyed how the vocals were done on this, because again, very few black vocalists that I found where they don't sound good.
Yeah, like I said, I've always been a fan of his. He's always sounded the same. And musically, they, like I said, that, you know, if you went back and you would listen to, say, like Animosity, which is my favorite album.
Yeah.
You would, like, you listen to it and then listen to this, even though this album is like 25 years after that one.
So it's similar to, like, when
you can tell that they haven't changed.
So it's very similar to how, like, within Temptation, like, whenever I started listening to The Heart of Everything and then Bleed Out, although I way prefer Heart of Everything just because there's...
I love The Heart of Everything.
The production wise on it, it is the biggest
now, when
example.
you say Heart of Everything, you're talking about the older album, not the newest one they just put out. Are you talking about the newest one they just put out?
Talking about Heart of Everything.
So the older one, okay.
Yes. That was a primary example of, for me, less is more on production, because it's like, yes, they went nice and atmospheric on this one, but there were moments where it was almost too much.
Yeah.
In comparison to The Heart of Everything, when I heard that, I'm like, whoa. Like,
Heart of Everything is my favorite album, just like Animosity is my favorite.
Yeah, but it's like, even this, and I wish metal guys would understand this, is that you don't need a lot to sound amazing. Like, just keep it fucking simple, and if you can't keep it simple and make it good, then you need to reevaluate your writing or how you write. I just feel like that other voicings and other elements brought into something, or just trying to do so much at once, is not necessarily a cop out, but what's the word? It is compensating for your lack of good writing. But that's just my own perspective, and I'm a picky son of a bitch. So
Yeah, you are. I mean, I am too, to an extent, but I think in different ways. You're more in the sound and quality and all that, where I'm more into vocals. I'm very picky about vocals.
Oh, the same thing with me on metal. I mean, and honestly,
Especially harsh vocals, I'm very picky.
And for the most part, I can give a shit about what the lyrics are, to be honest. It's like, how are the vocals done?
Yeah, like when it comes to harsh vocals, I've got to be able to understand you. If I cannot understand you, I'm not going to.
Which is the reason you like Dark Funeral, is because you could actually understand it.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of bands that use a lot of harsh vocals. I can understand the guy. So I like, now, just if I just saying I can understand them doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna like this. If I don't like the music too, it's not gonna work for me.
Exactly. But yeah, overall, stellar job from Sevendust. Holy shit.
Yep.
Well done.
And, like I said, to me, it'd be up there in their top 3 or 4 albums they've put out.
All right. Well, until next time, keep going heavy.